the desert remembers everything. Even when no one else does, the sand keeps secrets in its grain, and the wind mourns softly for the souls it swallowed. It was in this very landscape, harsh, dry, hauntingly silent, that Anna Whitmore vanished without a trace. It was a bright morning in June 2014, the kind that warms the rocks by sunrise and scalds the sand by noon. Birds flew lazily overhead. Joshua trees stood still like ancient sentinels. And somewhere between the light and the silence, Anna disappeared, 7 months pregnant, barefoot, and gone before the world could understand what happened. Jackson Whitmore had woken up that morning to a strangely quiet cabin. He reached for Anna, but her side of the bed was cold. At first, he thought she'd stepped outside. She loved desert sunrises, often whispering how they felt like messages from another world. He smiled, pulled on his shirt, and walked out, expecting to find her near the fire pit or the edge of the trail. But she wasn't there. Her shoes were missing. Her journal sat open on the table with the words, "Let's go for a walk tomorrow morning, just you, me, and Lila." That was the last thing she ever wrote. Jackson didn't know it yet, but that sentence would echo in his ears for the next 11 years. At first, he searched with logic. He called her name, followed the obvious trails, retraced their steps from the night before. When he found nothing, panic took over. He ran, screamed, checked the cliffs and ravines, scraped his hands climbing rocks. By the time he called 911, his voice was hoarse. Within hours, the small cabin near Joshua Tree National Park was surrounded by rescue teams. Bloodhounds sniffed her belongings. Helicopters circled overhead. Volunteers from nearby towns poured in. They searched for a week. Every bush, every dry riverbed, every rocky ledge. They found nothing. No footprints. No phone. No signs of struggle. Just a red scarf, snagged on a mesquite branch half a mile from the cabin, Anna's favorite scarf. As if she had left it behind as a breadcrumb for someone who never arrived. Jackson was questioned thoroughly, of course. He understood. He knew how these things looked. A pregnant woman disappears in the desert while alone with her husband? The police didn't say it, but the world did. Online forums accused him of foul play. News anchors raised eyebrows and made insinuations. But there was no evidence. No motive. No proof. Jackson had loved Anna with his entire being. Her disappearance didn't just break his heart, it erased it. The following months turned Jackson into a ghost. He stopped working. He sold their house in Pasadena. He refused to leave the town. The small cabin where Anna vanished became his home, his prison, and his chapel. Every morning, he'd walk the trails with a map and GPS, logging routes, hoping for a clue. His hair grayed. His eyes hollowed. Friends stopped visiting. He lived in a loop, reliving the last night they spent together, the smell of her skin, the way her hands cradled her belly as she laughed about how strong their daughter already kicked. He kept the baby's name, Lila, written on the wall above the bed, just in case they came home. Years passed like sand through fingers. By 2018, Jackson had become a strange fixture in town, the man who wandered the desert with charts and binoculars, who refused to move on. But one morning, while visiting the local animal shelter, something changed. He saw a dog, old, limping, eyes sharp but tired. It was a German Shepherd, retired from a canine unit after being injured during a police operation. The staff said he had been passed around a few times, too old, too much baggage, too hard to handle. His name was Echo. Jackson didn't hesitate. He signed the papers that day. Echo wasn't easy. He didn't bark, didn't play. He paced at night, patrolled the cabin perimeter like he was still on duty. But Jackson didn't want a pet, he wanted something else. And strangely, Echo seemed to understand that. He stayed close, alert, like he knew the silence that haunted Jackson. Over time, their bond grew. Jackson expanded the cabin grounds, built kennels, and started rescuing more retired K9S dogs with trauma. Dogs no one else wanted. Echo was the first, but he wasn't the last. Jackson's little property turned into a haven for discarded heroes. But Echo was different. From the very beginning, Whenever they hiked near a certain part of the desert an area search teams had once called low priority, Echo would pause. His nose would twitch. He'd stare out toward a dry ravine, then circle, then stop again. Jackson noticed it. He tried to dismiss it. He told himself Echo was reacting to a coyote den or old scent trails. But deep down, something shifted. There was a kind of gravity in Echo's pauses, like a whisper in the air that even Jackson could feel but couldn't explain. In October 2025, everything changed again. A young hiker went missing near Mesquite Ridge. The sheriff's department, low on resources, called Jackson to ask if he could bring one of his dogs. He hesitated at first. It had been years since he participated in official searches. But Echo barked when he heard the call, as if he knew. That day, Jackson loaded him into the truck and drove to the site. They spent hours combing the trails. Volunteers fanned out in all directions. Jackson followed Echo, who stayed quiet but determined. Then, without warning, Echo pulled hard on his leash and bolted toward that same dry ravine he always paused near. This time, he didn't stop. He began digging frantically, dirt flying behind him in bursts. Jackson's heart dropped. He dropped to his knees, calling the sheriff immediately. The area was cordoned off within the hour. Forensics arrived. Drones scanned overhead. Jackson stood in silence as the team uncovered a human skeleton buried beneath a shallow layer of sand. Curled in a fetal position. Protective. And next to her, the unmistakable shape of a tiny child, bones not yet fully formed. The scene was so quiet you could hear the flies buzzing. The sun didn't feel warm anymore. DNA confirmed what Jackson already knew. Anna. And their daughter, Lila. The medical report suggested she had fallen into the ravine, possibly while disoriented. Her water supply was gone. Her phone, shattered, was found wedged in a nearby rock crevice. There were no signs of foul play. She had likely survived for a day or two, waiting for help. Alone. In pain. Holding her unborn child as the desert took her last breath. Jackson didn't cry, not at first. He just sat beside Echo, staring at the open grave. 11 years of torment, of nightmares and guilt and questions, had led to this moment. And it wasn't rescue. It was closure. Echo, the dog no one wanted, the one who had carried his pain in silence, had brought her home. The funeral was small. Just Jackson, Echo, a few loyal friends, and 2 pine boxes buried beneath a Joshua tree. Jackson placed Anna's scarf beside the grave and whispered her name. Echo sat beside him the entire time, head down, tail still. The town mourned with him. News of Echo's discovery spread across the state. He was given a medal, an honorary canine badge, and more love than he had ever known. But Jackson refused interviews. He just said, she waited. And Echo listened. Today, Jackson still lives in that cabin. He still rescues K9S, still walks the trails. But now, he carries peace in his steps. Echo sleeps beside his bed, his fur more gray than black. He's getting older. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, Jackson swears he can hear Anna's laughter in the wind, soft, carried by the sand, finally at rest. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Stories like these deserve to be heard. They remind us that even in silence, even in darkness, love never dies, it waits. And before you go, please comment below, still waiting. Still believing. Let someone out there know they're not alone.